And I'm looking forward, I believe we are all looking forward to a good day. And thank you, our facilitators also, for putting all this together. I really want to believe that we'll have a good time, to be a good learning time. So yes, just looking forward, and most welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Catherine, for the opening remarks. And now we'll send it to Rosemary, bright and early in pink. So I'm also very excited. Rosemary, I met with her the other day when we were doing the trial, and it is a very wonderful session we have planned for you this morning. And let's be open to learning. Let's ask questions. We have a chat box on your screen, I believe. So feel free to drop us any questions as we go on that you feel that that are not answered. But other than that, let's have a wonderful session. Rosemary, to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it's a Monday morning. Normally we use color to motivate mornings. Yes,
All right.
Yeah, so if you ever want to motivate your day, start it off with color.
With a bright color. I love the color actually.
Thank you. It's called the psychology of color.
Awesome.
Yes, that's a lesson for another day. So we get down to today's session. And thank you everybody for logging in early. So I'll just get into it. Like Purity has said, feel free to drop your comments on the chat box so that we brainstorm as we go along. Considering I can't see many faces, so it would be hard to pick you and ask you the question. So I'd prefer if you have any comments, put it on the chat box, then we'll brainstorm as we go ahead. So we are starting off with communication. Today we are looking at three things: communication, personality, and emotional intelligence. So we start off with communication. Normally we say the basic definition of communication is that you need to transmit information and receive information. So much so that if somebody tells me you can go ahead and start, like Purity would say, then we assume she has communicated and I have received that information. But then as you work around in business or even in our normal day-to-day communication from home, sometimes you realize that you transmit information, but the way it is interpreted is not the way you intended it to be interpreted. So for example, if this morning somebody has asked Cyrus, how are you? And then Cyrus would say, I'm fine. If Purity asked me how I am this morning, I'll say, I'm fine. Considering I'm not seated next to her, that I'm fine can mean almost anything. I could be saying I'm fine and I'm probably seated here and I cannot move, but I'm just saying I'm fine. So whatever information we pass sometimes could mean something totally different. When somebody says I'm fine, it could mean they're feeling well. Maybe they were not well before. It could mean I am happy. It could mean I was unwell, but now I'm better. It could mean I was unhappy, but now I'm happy. So just that one statement of I'm fine can mean so very many things. It could actually mean what we normally do most of the time. I'm not feeling okay, but really it doesn't matter. You don't want to know about it. Because there are so many times that somebody just says I'm fine, but they're actually not fine. They're just thinking they don't take you through the hassle of trying to explain to you whether they are fine, why they are not fine, because maybe it's none of your business. So we have to stop us with the assumption that whatever somebody says, they have actually communicated. Sometimes they have actually not communicated. And then that brings us the idea that sometimes communication is not just transmitting information. It needs to be more than that. So communication has to bring down using a shared understanding. Anytime you communicate, you need to be sure that the other person has actually shared your understanding. Whatever you wanted them to mean, whatever you wanted to mean is exactly what they have actually also understood. So if the other person has actually not gotten what you meant them to get, then you have not communicated. If I say I'm fine, but deep inside I'm actually not fine, I still haven't communicated. I've transmitted information, I have received information, but there hasn't been a shared understanding. Somebody has actually not gotten what I understand. And I think that's the biggest gap we have in communication, that what the person means or whatever you intend to communicate is not what the other person actually understands. So we need to always ask ourselves when we are making any sort of communication, did the person understand exactly what I meant them to understand? Remembering that we have a lot of filters that come in between the information that is sent, information that is received. Whatever you sent to the other person can be filtered based on many things. Sometimes it's filtered because of the way that person feels that morning. So much so that you could greet somebody in the morning, then just because they are not having a good day, whatever they understand your information as can be totally different. So we have a lot of filters that we take through information. So we have to be really keen to ensure that whatever we meant to communicate is exactly what we have transmitted to the other person. To enhance that understanding, we need to make sure that we bring down information into 3 levels. We need to first create a relationship with anybody. And I always say, as Africans, we are very good at this because we always try to create rapport with the people that we meet. Rarely will you meet somebody, even the vendor on the streets, rarely will you meet somebody who is just going to sell you something without starting by greeting you or creating a relationship. Because it's very important to always try to create a relationship first. Then based on that, you can now go ahead and pass the information that you want. And this applies across board, whether in the office, you're calling somebody for a disciplinary meeting, whether you just walked into it and you want to check how work is going, and whether you're meeting an external person to follow up on a certain issue. Creating relationships will be very, very important in ensuring that the communication actually happens. So the easiest way for you to make sure that actually you understand each other is to first create a relationship. Because what that relationship does, it also gives you a chance to understand the other person. If you come to me in the morning and you want to know why I did not send in a report yesterday, if you don't start by asking how my day was and maybe have a look at how I looked that morning, you might not even have an idea of why I did not submit that report yesterday. So creating a relationship becomes very important in any sort of communication. So before you go ahead and tell somebody, I want that report, or where were you yesterday, or what happened the other day, always start by creating a relationship. And it doesn't matter how often you have been interacting with that person, and especially now that we are working from home, we have very many dynamics. If you don't try to create a basic relationship first, if you first don't try to show interest in the person, how is your morning, how was your weekend, how is work going, just that basic understanding, just that basic catching up, like we call it, to build a bit of a rapport. Whether you are dealing with somebody you deal with on a daily basis, or if you're dealing with a stranger, you're having a meeting for the first time, building a relationship goes a long way in creating understanding in the communication that you pass. So anytime you have to pass any sort of communication, doesn't matter how quickly you want the action done, maybe you want that report like yesterday, but it will be important to ask yourself, how is the person doing? Because especially now that we are not seeing each other, a lot is happening behind the scenes. Somebody could not have slept the whole day yesterday. Somebody could be sick. They lost a loved one. Another one was diagnosed with COVID. Another one has another issue. People are going through a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So if you don't take time to first check on people before we communicate what we need to communicate, you're going to have a lot of misunderstandings. So before you tell the person you want a report, or how far are you with this, or have you met that client, have you had this conversation, first start with the basic building of a relationship. Break the ice. If you're meeting them physically, what compliments, like Purity has decided to do with me this morning. Giving somebody a compliment after greetings is a big way of building rapport. Just appreciating how they look that morning. Picking up a familiar topic, like now we have very many familiar topics. The weather just changed. We have COVID going around. We have IMF giving us money. Just keeping up to pick up a familiar topic, because that way you also get to read the other person's perspective. The beauty of building rapport is also getting to understand the person you're dealing with. If it's somebody you have been dealing with before, you at least get to know how are they doing this morning, what are they struggling with, before I start bombarding them with the information about work. If it's a stranger or person you're meeting for the first time, you want to gauge their perspective. How do they view life? What kind of a person am I dealing with? What kind of a personality is this that I'm dealing with? Then you can be able to pick on a more positive note. So building a relationship with someone doesn't matter whether it's going to take 1 minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the situation that you're in, becomes very, very important in communication. So always make sure you build a relationship with the person. Show interest, show sensitivity, choose the right words to have that communication with someone. If it's one-on-one, check their physical behavior. Their nonverbal behavior can tell you. Their eye contact, maintain their eye contact. Do they look happy? How is their facial expression? Do they look sad? Are you able to pick it up from there and pick a conversation so that you're able to show the person that you're actually with them? Showing interest, showing sensitivity being aware of the other person makes it very easy for you to pick up a conversation. Whether you're picking a normal meeting conversation, whether you're picking a disciplinary conversation, whether it's a stranger or somebody you're meeting for the first time to enhance a certain sort of action, building relationships become very, very key. Then of course, once you have built information or build relationship, you can now go ahead and pass the information that you needed to pass. Remember, we say the most important thing in information is to make sure that you create a shared understanding. Does the other person understand where you're coming from? Do they understand exactly what you mean? So that you don't say one thing and then they understand the other. And I know this happens a lot, especially when you're a team leader. When you keep saying, but I have told you this like 5 times. And I always say, if you have to repeat it 5 times, it's because the person still did not get what you meant. So it doesn't matter how many times you repeat something. If the other person did not get it, then you still did not communicate. And you need to ask yourself, what is happening? What is the barrier here? Because if you have to keep repeating something to somebody, then there's something that is not checking in between the two. So you need to ask yourself, is there a barrier? Is there something that is hindering this communication between me and the person that I'm communicating with? We have differences in terms of culture. We have differences in terms of how I communicate. Maybe how I write is not how this person understands. Maybe how I express myself is not the way this person understands. As we look at it at personalities, you also see how different people expect you to communicate in different ways. So you want to ask yourself, is there a problem in the way I'm communicating? And remember that communication is not for you, it's for the other person. So it doesn't matter how well you think you communicated. It doesn't matter how good you think your language is. If the other person does not get it, then it does not matter. And that is why when it comes to passing information, you want to also ask yourself, who am I dealing with? If I'm going to meet a pastor somewhere in the Loitoktok, do I talk to the same way to the pastor I was talking to in Woodley, for example? Or do I need to change my way of looking at things? Do I need to change my language? Do I need to change how I present myself? So the communication is always for the other person. So if the other person doesn't get it, then you still have not communicated. So that brings you to always asking yourself, who am I dealing with in this situation? Who am I dealing with in terms of their demographics? Because how I communicate to a young person is different from how I communicate to an older person. Who am I dealing with in terms of their culture? Who am I dealing with in terms of their geographical location? Who am I dealing with in terms of their expectations? Who am I dealing with in terms of personality? All those things matter in terms of how you communicate with people. So we have to stop thinking communication in terms of me. Like, this is how I communicated and I said it. This is how we communicate and I wrote that email. Communication is not about you. It is about the other person. So every time you're going to communicate to somebody, always think in terms of the other person. How does the other person understand things? How does the other person expect me to communicate? Then in that case, you will always be communicating for the other person and not communicating for you. And if the other person does not understand, then your communication has failed. Like I've said, it doesn't matter how many times you said it, doesn't matter how many times you wrote it. If the other person did not understand, then your communication has failed. And you need to ask yourself, what are you missing? And whatever you are missing is from the other person, not from you. What is it in that other person that you did not take into account when you're making that communication? Then in that case, you're likely to make clearer information than just assuming I dropped an email or I called the person or I was in that meeting and I said it. You always want to make sure that the person gets it. Of course, now after that, the third level of understanding is the action. If you have built a relationship with me, if you have given me the information in terms of what you wanted me to do, then eventually now you can tell me what exactly you want me to do. You can now give me clear information, and not just information, but persuasive ideas. You have, as a team leader, one of the biggest things you learn is how to be persuasive. It's part of leadership. How do you convincingly give people information to a point that they actually believe you and take action? Because giving me a lot of information does not count until eventually you tell me, what exactly do you want me to do? So you came to me and you wanted to train me so that I can assist you to collect some information maybe from the ground. You have built a relationship with me. You know how we live around here. You know how the community around here works. And you know the language that we use, what times we normally meet in the market or in our churches or in fellowships. We have built a relationship, so now you know what you're dealing with. After that, you can give me the information as BTL, what do we do? Why are you here on the ground? How have you things have been unfolding before as far as BTL work is days on the ground, after you have passed all that information and you are sure I understand what exactly you guys do, now go ahead and tell me the action point. So after all that, what do you want me to do? Where do I come in? As this person you have met, where do I come in this information? Then you can give me the action that based on all this, I want you to help us to do 1, 2, 3 in a very persuasive way. Because we normally say it doesn't matter what individual we are dealing with, human beings are more emotional than they are logical. In all circumstances, human beings are more emotional than they are logical. We try to be very logical, especially from a work perspective, but eventually most of the decisions that we make are emotionally oriented. It is because somebody touched your heart that you feel like you need to do the right thing or you need to assist them. So when it comes to asking for action or what you want the other person to do, always try and look for the persuasive side of things rather than the logical or the factual side of things. People are more emotional than they are logical. So if you can speak to their heart more than you speak to their head, then in that case, you're likely to get more followership. You're likely to get people who are more oriented towards following what you're asking them rather than just giving them the facts. Facts are good because I need to know what you guys do. How does it help the world? How do you guys get funding? But more to that from a persuasive perspective. How does that help me as an individual? How does that help the community around me? Persuasion is when it is about me and not about you. Then it speaks to my heart. If it speaks to my heart, then chances are I'm likely to be more supportive. And that also applies in a work environment where you're also supervising people. If you want people to probably go the extra mile, facts are not going to be enough. It's not enough to tell me tomorrow you guys need to be starting working at 7 a.m. You need to convince me better in a persuasive way. Why do I have to come in at 7 a.m.? What is in it for me? How does that create a change in BTL, and how does that create a change for us? How does it make work more effective? How does it make us more outstanding? If I can hear more persuasion than facts, then chances are I'm going to buy into it more than just you giving me the facts. So in all areas of communication, internally and externally, you have to look at it from those 3 angles. Did I build a relationship with this person? Did I take a moment to know how they are doing and who they are and how their life is unfolding and how their family is doing, for example? After that, did I pass the right information? Did I give all they to get? Did they understand it the way I wanted them to understand without extra filters? Then after that, can I persuasively convince them to do what I want them to do because I need action, I need some work to get done. So in terms of communication, you always want to make sure, for you to make sure there is shared understanding, those 3 things need to follow each other. But then as you move around, you may be a good communicator, but you're also going to meet other people who are also communicating because you're not just the one communicating. Even the people in your team are communicating to you. The people you meet on the ground are going to communicate to you. So you're going to come across different communication styles. People communicate differently. And normally we say even silence is communication. So even when somebody keeps quiet, they're telling you something. So communication is just not saying something. Sometimes not saying something is actually communication. So as you move around, you're going to come across people with different communication styles. You're going to have people who have aggressive communication. You're going to have people with passive communication. You're going to meet people who are passive aggressive communicators. And you're going to have people who are assertive communicators. So as you go along, what you want to ask yourself, what kind of people am I meeting? What kind of people am I dealing with? Then as we go down to talk about personalities, we'll see how do you engage each of these kind of people. And you as a communicator also, what kind of communicator are you, especially when it comes to disagreements? When you're having a normal conversation, everybody seems to be a good communicator. Until it gets to a point where we can't agree on something, then things shift very fast. And that's the time you get to know what your real communication style is. A normal conversation doesn't have issues. Issues start when you have disagreements or when you have a conflict. And that's where everybody's true colors seem to jump out. So you want to ask yourself, as a communicator, which side do you lean on mostly, especially during disagreements? And the people you communicate with more often, what kind of communication style do they bring on the table? And how do you engage them? And how do you also mentor and the people in your team to make sure that they also become better communicators? Because you also can actually be able to mentor and model the right kind of communication within your team. So from the 4 communication styles, the first one you said is assertive communication. Assertive communication is when you care about yourself and you also care about the other person. So that every time we have a disagreement, it is somebody doesn't have to lose. We can still find a middle ground where you win and I win. Like I can listen to you, you can listen to me, and we can find somewhere to meet in the middle. Then you have the passive-aggressive communicators. We look at I lose, you lose. These are the people who, if I don't get it, you also don't get it. So you're asking me to do some kind of work, but I'm also thinking you're pushing me and you're also not doing the part. I'm also not going to do it, but I'm not telling you I'm not going to do it. So you just sit there and wait for that report, and I'm never sending that report because I don't think you're worth it. Then you have the passive communicators. Passive communicators don't care about themselves, but they care too much about other people. So for them, they are always losing and letting the other person win, which means that they take in too much. This is a person, even if you tell them I need a report at midnight, they will wake up to send it. Then if you give them too much work and they still have too much of it, they're not going to say they are being overwhelmed. So they will always pushing and pushing and pushing at the expense of their own life, which is again, from a personal perspective, is not a good thing for them. Then you have the aggressive communicators. For them, they have to win at all costs. So what they mean is that I win all the time and you lose all the time. So they care too much about themselves that they don't care about anybody else. So that if work needs to be done, it doesn't matter whether you're going to do it when you're crawling, it doesn't matter how sick you are, it doesn't matter whether you have a sick child at home, I don't care. I want that report now. So for them, it is about getting things done and things going their way, and they don't get a chance to listen to anybody else. So you want to ask yourself, what is your default, especially when you have disagreements or when there's too much pressure at work and things need to get done, which one do you resort to? And the people that work around you, what kind of style do they resort to? And how can you help them to become better people? So just to highlight a little about the 4 communication styles, the passive communicators, they are very apologetic. Like we said, they are always looking to let the other person win. They really look out for themselves. So they are very apologetic. They feel like they should always be helping out. They should take it an obligation, even when you're just asking to be helped. Actually, you might just be needing help. It's not like you're really under pressure and you're just asking the person to help me with this work. So go for this meeting on my behalf. Even when they're busy, they don't know how to say, I am busy or I'm not able to do that. So they always feel very apologetic and they're very sorry, even when they're not supposed to be sorry. This obviously tells you they have an issue with their self-esteem. They're inexpressive, meaning even if you're in meetings, even if you call them to ask how they are feeling, even if they are not okay, they are not likely to say they are not okay. If they're in a meeting with many people, chances are they really express themselves. They really say, I'm not comfortable with this, or I think we should do this. You're not going to see them coming up with ideas. Neither are you going to see them saying they are not okay with something. So they're very inexpressive, which makes it very difficult for them, especially because if you are in a meeting and you're expecting that person to speak out and they're not speaking out, it becomes very difficult to work with such kind of a person in your own environment. So you want to make sure that you want to have somebody who can actually say something, or you also want to be the person who actually says something, because it's very, very important for you to be able to express yourself. So they'll avoid confrontation. So the reason why they are inexpressive, the reason why they take in too much without saying, I've heard enough, it's because they're avoiding any sorts of disagreements. They will avoid disagreements at all costs. They don't want to be on the wrong side. They don't want to have to argue with anybody. They don't have to look like they are not good team players. So what that means is they will avoid confrontation at all costs. They will make sure that everything is done. I would rather do it 24 hours, but we don't get to argue with anybody, which is obviously not a good place to be. So they find it difficult to take up responsibilities or take tough decisions, which is very obvious, because if you're not able to stand up for yourself, if you're not avoiding disagreements, then chances are you also don't make tough decisions. So if you're not able to make tough decisions, that also makes life very difficult for you. And they're always yielding into other people's preferences. So they rarely are the ones saying what they want. Most of the time, they are always the ones taking in. So there's work that needs to be done, they are willing to help out. There's something that somebody wants done, they're always willing to help out, which is again not a good place. So you want to make sure that if you have such a person in your team, how do you help them? Because eventually they can easily be bullied, they can easily get overwhelmed, they can easily get into stress and depression because they rarely express themselves. You never really get to know what is going on around them. So they have very soft voices. If you're trying to pick such a person from your team, especially when you're probably having physical meetings, you'll realize they have very soft voices. They keep a very small posture. It's not necessarily like they have small bodies, But generally, you see them keeping very small postures. You will see them having their heads down. When you ask them to talk, especially if you catch them off guard without giving them a warning that you need them to speak, they will fidget, they will sweat, they get a bit quite uncomfortable and very anxious. If you ask them to speak when they were not prepared to do it, they rarely keep an eye contact. And that also shows you they have an issue with their self-confidence, because they're not able to keep an eye contact. You'll be talking to them, and especially when you're having a tough conversation, and they will not look at you in the eyes. But as much as all this is happening, that also eventually gives them what we call a victim mentality. They always feel like victims because they're taking in too much. They take in too much from other people. They're taking in all the work from other people. They're taking all suggestions from other people, but they're not saying what they think should be done. So that eventually makes them feel like victims. Yes, they are not able to stand up for themselves. So you want to ask yourself, during disagreements, do you have such kind of a person? Or within your team, would you be having such kind of a person who is a passive communicator? Or even generally the stakeholders that you deal with, would you be having such people? And how do you engage them to make sure that they can actually say something? Then you have the aggressive communicators. Like we say, this. So if it is my idea, it is my idea or none. It is my way or the highway. So they are always out to win. So their suggestions have to be done. Their deadlines have to be met the way they want to. Their complaints are supposed to be addressed fast. According to them, they're always right. Nothing should go according to anybody else. Everything needs to go their way. So when you're having a conversation with them, especially when there are disagreements or when there's conflict, one of the things that you're going to pick out is that they're very frightening. They can be threatening. They can be very loud and hostile. So every time you're trying to have a conversation, especially when there are disagreements, they're not likely to keep it calm and have a normal one-to-one conversation. So they become very hostile. They become very loud. They are willing to achieve goals at the expense of others. Like I said, they're the people, if the report needs to come at midnight, I don't care where you are, that report has to meet to find me at midnight. So they're out to win, and they're very demanding. They can be abrasive because they're probably the poorest in terms of the 3 levels of understanding we talked about. They are the poorest in terms of building a relationship. They're not likely to ask you how your night was, how your morning is, how your family is doing. They call in and all they want to hear is my report. I should have read it at midnight. They don't care whether you didn't sleep or you slept or whatever happened is none of their business. Very demanding, very abrasive. Can also be very unpredictable. You could be having a normal conversation and then out of the blues you mention something and they just blow it out of proportion and start shouting at you. And so they become very unpredictable to work with because you're not sure what they're going to say next. You're not sure when they're going to insult you or say something that is very wrong. So they're quite difficult to deal with in many circumstances. They're very loud. These are people you can easily pick. Actually, you don't need to look out for them. There are people who generally are loud and they speak in a very dominating way. So if it's in a meeting, they're probably the ones who talk 90% of the time. They dominate most conversations. They're very loud. They'll always make sure they're being seen. So even when people are seated, they're the people who have to stand when they're making their comments because they always want to look bigger than others and they're going to make very big gestures. They want to make sure they are known and you can hear me and you have to know that I am here. They can be quite sarcastic as well. So if you're going to say something and they're going to respond in a very sarcastic way, in the extreme, they can actually call you names, they can insult you, they can easily threaten you. But also the other side of them is that they're always blaming other people. So they rarely take responsibility for anything that goes wrong. So if a mistake happens, it's anybody else's fault apart from them. So they are never going to take responsibility for any mistake. They're going to push you to do things, but when something goes wrong, it's your problem, not their problem. So again, as a team leader, you don't want to be that kind of a person. Facial expression, of course, it has to be in a way that it is threatening other people. It is showing I'm the serious person here. So they can frown quite a bit, they glare. If you're having a one-on-one meeting, like we were having before COVID, they easily invade other people's personal space. So this is a person, if you're seated on your desk, they're coming so close to you. They're almost standing over you. If they're standing next to you, they're almost standing over you and they're getting too close. They're almost invading your personal space. What this means is that they're exercising power over you, literally. They're trying to show you that I am in power here and things need to be done my way. So again, an aggressive communicator, if you look at it from that angle, if that's your kind of communication during disagreements, you're going to have quite a big challenge once in a while because nobody wants to deal with an aggressive person. all the time. Then the third kind of a person, we talked about the passive aggressive communicators. Like the word suggests, they're not passive, so they're not totally inexpressive. They are not aggressive also, so they're not the out loud, intimidating, bullying kind of a person. So they are in between. They're indirectly aggressive. They are aggressive, but indirectly. So these are the very sarcastic kind of people. Like that lady there, you're telling them something, but in their head, they know you keep talking, but I'm not getting these things done. With the current generation, they're going to roll their eyes. So that tells you, you keep talking, but I don't agree with a thing that you're saying. The danger of dealing with this person is that they are two-faced. They are pleasant to the people on their faces. So they're nice to you. You're having a nice conversation. They are listening. They're actually saying yes. And you're thinking they are with you. You're thinking by tomorrow, this work will get done. I'm going to get and then we'll see what happened. This is actually not getting done. You have probably a teenager who rebels. You can pick this very well. So you're saying something, they look like they're agreeing, they're rolling their eyes, and they have their hand on the hip. That just tells you, you keep talking, and none of this is going to happen. So you can have such kind of people in your work environment. Their facial expression, they're sweet, they're innocent. You can't read anything on their face because they don't look like the aggressive people who are frowning and intimidating and showing you they're angry about it. They don't look angry at all. Even it comes to the space position, if they're standing next to you, they're close enough. They are warm, they are friendly, they can give you a pat on the back, they can give you a handshake. They're really nice people. But behind your back, a lot is going to happen. So these are the kind of language passive-aggressive use for you to have an idea of that kind of a person. Is a kind of person, if you're talking about something, they're going to say, I don't care, but someone else might. So like we said, for them, it's I lose, you lose. So I'm not getting this done, let somebody else deal with it. But they're not saying it on your face. On your face, they are nice. And you're thinking they are with you. But the moment they walk out, they're thinking, I don't care. Someone else might actually care about that. But they say, we can do this your way, but I don't think it's going to work. So in short, they're sabotaging you at all costs. They're making sure things are not moving. They're not making it move, and they're not helping you move. They're going to say something like, I think you did a good job, but they might not think so. So they literally can put you down indirectly. So they are aggressive, but indirectly. They're not shouting at you and threatening you. They're using sarcasm to bring you down. So they can be very dangerous people to work with, and they can be very difficult to handle in a team environment. Then finally, you have the assertive style. The assertive style is what keeps a balance between the aggressive communicators and the passive communicators. Because the passive communicators' problem is that they disrespect themselves. If you're a passive communicator, if you rarely express yourself, if you're always apologizing, if you're always yielding to other people's preferences and without saying something, even during disagreements, then you're disrespecting yourself. Because as a human being, you should be able to step up and stand up for yourself and say something. On the other side, aggressive communicators, they disrespect others. So they are always looking at themselves, but they're not looking to help anybody else. So for them, things have to go my way at all costs. I demand, I push, I threaten until things get done my way. So you want to have people, and you also want to be that person who is always in the middle. You want to be the person who is the assertive communicator. You want to be able to respect both the other people and also respect yourself in the process. And that is what assertive communication is all about. That you understand the needs of other people, you understand your needs as well, and find a middle ground. Actually, we always say your communication is a direct reflection of your self-esteem. How well you communicate, how well you can be able to accommodate other people in terms of communication and listen to their point of view and be able to express your point of view without necessarily being aggressive or allowing people to step on you, shows how assertive you are and also shows your level of self-esteem. So it is the healthiest and most effective style of communication, and it means you have the confidence to communicate without resorting to games or manipulation. So you don't have to manipulate people. You don't have to play games like the passive aggressive. You You don't have to manipulate people like the aggressive people. You don't have to let people manipulate you like the passive people, but you can actually stand up and communicate what you think you need to communicate. So these are the people who achieve goals without hurting others. So work gets done, but you don't have to step on people, because you can convincingly tell them what needs to be done, how you want it done, and you can also listen to their side of the story. What do they think? How are they able to do it? How do we meet in the meeting? So eventually it means you can get things done without hurting others. It also means that you protect your own rights and respect the rights of other people, because that is how a normal human being who is confident enough is supposed to be. You're supposed to learn how to protect your own rights. You should not have people stepping on you all the time. But you also need to respect the rights of other people. You cannot be stepping on other people to get things done. So you need to find a middle ground for that. They are socially and emotionally expressive. That means if it's in a meeting, they can express what they feel. If it is in an environment where they feel like people are doing the wrong thing, they can actually say what they feel about it. So they can express themselves confidently without having to worry too much about it. They can make their own choices and take responsibilities for them. So remember, if you're an aggressive communicator, you make choices for others and you don't take responsibility or anything. But if you're an assertive communicator, it means you own your choices and you take responsibility for whatever happens. If something goes wrong, you take responsibility for that. If it goes right, you take the compliment for it. So being an assertive communicator means you're open. You make choices and take responsibility for whatever consequences come with it without having to blame somebody else. If they need any or their needs to be met, then they can directly ask for their needs to be met while accepting the possibility of rejection. So they also know that it's not all the time that things are always going to go your way. There are times you need help, there are times you need things done, but they're not going to actually get done the way you want them done. So that is one thing. As an assertive communicator, you get to understand that there's work done or get it done at all. And that does not mean that doesn't count. You still have to have that openness that things sometimes will not always go your way, and it is okay. But when things go right and you're given compliments, they also graciously take compliments. Because the problem we have with passive communicators, they don't compliment. Depending.
Rosemary, I think we are losing you. I don't know if anyone else is losing Rosemary. I think we've lost Rosemary. Okay, she's very clear. Okay, okay.
Thank you for the. So the effects, if you're an aggressive communicator, is that people become alienated from you. Nobody wants to do with somebody who is always hurting them. Nobody wants to deal with somebody who is always bullying them. Actually, if you had such a boss in the office, you realize what people do. When there's something, a document that needs to be taken to such kind of a person, people are always asking, who is going to go in? Who is going to talk to that person? How does he look today? What is his mood today? Because nobody wants to deal with an unpredictable person who can erupt and start shouting at them anytime. So aggressive communicators are easily avoided because people develop feelings of hatred and fear, and they're always wondering what is going to happen next. So if you're that kind of a communicator, you can rest assured even your team ends up hiding a lot of problems. Because if something is not working, is an aggressive, put it under the carpet. Because if you are the one who comes with it, then you're going to take the wrath. You're the person who is going to be shouted at, you're the person who is going to be blamed, you're the person who is going to take all the problem. So if you're an aggressive team leader, eventually people get alienated from you. They will avoid you at all costs, and you're never going to know what is really going on the ground because nobody has the courage to step up and say something is wrong because they don't want to be blamed for it. If you're a passive communicator, people obviously like you because generally people like people who are soft-natured, people who are polite, you attract a lot of people around you. Even your team is, if you're a team leader, you're likely to have people around you who are really happy to work with you. The downside of that is you're going to take in too much. So eventually you can actually get bullied even when you're the team leader. You'll find people doing what you call reverse delegation. Instead of doing the work, they pass work back to you. And with that, with some excuses, like they're not able to get it done. So they'll keep giving you a lot of excuses because they know you're not going to hit back. You're always going to take a tip. So especially if you're a team leader, you don't want to be a passive communicator because you have some strong people in your team who are going to take advantage of that. So they're going to do reverse delegation and send work back to you when it should be them doing the work. It actually tells them you have low self-confidence or you have low self-esteem, and so they can easily step on you. So you don't want to be a passive communicator, especially as a team leader. Communicators, the danger of these people is that they cannot keep long-lasting relationships. The first few days, everything looks okay. You are happy because they're friendly, they are sweet, they are nice. But it's time you get to realize this person actually never gets anything done. We'll come, agree, and they look like they're going to come back to us with that feedback. This work is going to get done. They're going to talk to that client on my behalf, but then eventually they don't get to do it. So because of those unclear intentions, because people cannot really tell where you belong, eventually you can't keep long-lasting relationships. So you develop trust issues because people really can't trust you and they don't know what they're dealing with. So it becomes very, very difficult working with you going forward. But if you're an assertive communicator, what happens, especially if you're a team leader, of course, first of all, you become a good role model because you teach people how to communicate during disagreements. And I always say people look up to you, especially if you're leading them. They'll always look, how does he or she handle us when you have a disagreement, when we are wrong, when we have conflict. So you're able to build an assertive environment. It means you build an environment that has respect for others. So much so that it is not always things going your way. You also get to give other people a chance to bring their ideas on the table. So you build a respectful environment for other people because they know they are respected. You're able to stand up for others, and as much as you also stand for yourself. So the people don't step on you, but you also don't step on them. So you stand up for others and you stand up for yourself. But most importantly, you have the courage to point out what is right or what is wrong, such that if somebody is right, you can confidently tell them this is right and give them the compliments. You don't hold compliments back. If something is wrong, you can confidently tell somebody this is wrong because you have all the facts and you can give them the facts as they are. So being an assertive communicator is very important in whether you are the team leader or whether you're modeling it for the people around you. You're able to build an environment or a team that can assertively be able to bring out their feelings, bring out their compliments, bring out their ideas. Then you build a more respectful environment where people can actually easily communicate without hurting others or without hurting themselves. So in essence, what you're asking yourself is, are you an assertive communicator? Are you able to build an assertive environment among the team that you have? So for us to be able to tell whether we are assertive communicators, I have a number of questions there. So I want you to read through those questions, then answer yes or no. So if you read the first question or the first statement, it says, I am comfortable meeting new people in social situations. Is that a yes or a no for you? So I'm assuming you have a pen and paper, or these days our phones act as our pen and paper. So you check, is that a yes or a no for you? The second statement says, I am able to say no without feeling guilty or anxious. Is that a yes or a no for you? I can express strong feelings such as anger, frustration, or disappointment. Is that a yes or a no for you? I can easily request help and information from others. Is that a yes or a no for you? I feel capable of learning new things and performing new tasks. Is that a yes or a no for you? I am able to acknowledge and take responsibility for my mistakes. Is that a yes or a no for you? I can discuss my beliefs without judging those who don't agree with me. Is that a yes or a no for you? I am able to express my honest opinion to others, even if they don't agree. Is that a yes or a no for you? I tell others when their behavior is not acceptable to me. Is that a yes or a no for you? I can speak confidently in group situations. Is that a yes or a no for you? I believe my needs are as important as those of others and should be considered. Is that a yes or a no for you? I can assert my beliefs even when the majority disagrees with me. Is that a yes or a no? I can express anger or disappointment without blaming others. Sorry, without blaming others. To make it more, okay, sorry, I lost that. Give me a minute. Without blaming others. Is that a yes or a no for you? I am comfortable delegating tasks to others. Is that a yes or a no? I value my own experience and wisdom. Is that a yes or a no for you? Then count the number of yeses. Is that count the number of yeses that you get? I'm assuming there's a word like yeses. Count the number of yes that you get.
Rosemary, do you want us to do the poll?
Yes, I was just giving them a minute to just fill in and tell us how many, everybody to count their number of yes. Then Purity is giving us a poll. So we see how many people get more than 10, how many people get less than 10. Okay, Purity, you can give us the poll.
All right, they're asking if you're able to scroll up a bit. I think see the last questions.
It's not busy. That's what I was trying to do when I lost the. Let me.
Or we can read the last 3 questions.
Okay.
Yes, try to project it.
That's better.
I think that's better. I can see the entire screen on my end. I don't know if Edward, are you able to see your entire screen? Yes. So I think that's much better. We've also launched the poll. It should be on your screen. Just answer us if you have more than 10 yeses or less than 10 yeses. And 19 of us have already answered the poll. So 20 more to go. Also turn on your cameras. We see who are answering the poll. Today I've not seen anyone apart from Cyrus.
We don't want to be seen on a Monday morning.
On a chilly Monday morning in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Let us see you. I can see Catherine. Well, let's see all of you. Nganai Sabila, right?
Right, Nganai.
Awesome.
Ngania. Ngania.
Oh, it's Ngania.
No, Ngania.
Ngania. Okay. Let's see the other people. Yes, I can see Elsie, Onesimus, Jacob, Peter, HR, Mercy. Awesome. All of you look so bright. Janet, again, you're in the office. Do you work from the office all the time?
Not all the time.
Not all the time. Okay. Samson Hilibe. Is that Hilibe?
Kiribai.
Hilibai. Okay. Jackson, Grace. Hey, nice. Damaris. Damaris, you look where you are, like it's pretty cold. You're on a jacket. There's Kome. It's Kome. Come-E. Tobias, Samuel. Hey, Ruben. I was told, Ruben, that's your house. It looks pretty, pretty, pretty. There is Abraham. I know Abraham. Abraham, you know me, right?
Yes. We have ever hosted one of your trainings here at
Yes,
CIC.
at BTL in Riru.
Yes.
There's Dara. Dara, I was told that's your real official name, right?
Yeah, it's a real name.
I need to see your ID.
I'm not faking, it's a name.
Okay, there's Daisy. Cyrus is back now with a coat. I think in the morning you did not have a coat.
Getting chilly.
Oh, it's getting chilly. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's
Nairobi is different.
Sorry?
Nairobi is getting different.
Yes, pretty different. It's almost like winter. Okay, I think all of us have answered the poll, apart from maybe like 2 people, but let me end the results and let's see how assertive we are. There are the results.
Okay, great. So 76% of us are assertive. So you're assertive if you answered yes to more than 10 of the, I think, 16 questions. So if you answered yes to more than 10 questions, it means you're assertive. If you answered yes to less than 10 questions, it means you need to work on your assertiveness. So there are a few things you need to do to become more assertive. And I think those questions kind of guide you. So whatever question you answered and no, it means there's something you need to do about it. For example, maybe we said no to delegating. You need to try doing more of delegation or learn how to be a better delegator. If you said no to maybe discussing your beliefs without judgments of others, have work environments. They also apply in all other relationships that we have, whether it's at home with our spouses, whether it is with our children. Communication applies across both. So we also want to think communication in terms of the people we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and how does it affect those relationships? Are you able to be more assertive when you're having a communication with your teenager, or with your partner, or with your friend, or with your other members, wherever you interact with? Or are you passive, or are you aggressive? Are you able to show that across both? Because we say 99% of the time, you need to be assertive. I can see the question. Thank you, Samson, for that. We'll be joining it up with personalities. But before that, I just want us to play a short video on those communication styles from a psychologist's perspective, so that we see how it applies across boards, even in other aspects of life. We always say training is not just for work, it's also for our personal growth and personal life situations. So I'm putting up a short video just to help us summarize that. Meanwhile, put your questions like Samson has done, and your thoughts, not just questions, even your thoughts and experiences on the chat box. Then we shall brainstorm them together. So let's watch